Nike, game-changing origin and business model explained. Did you know that Nike's slogan, "Just Do It," was inspired by a convicted murderer? Stick around to find out who and how. There's an ongoing dispute about who wore the first Nike sports shoes. What's not in dispute, however, is that Nike is the most valuable sports business brand. The company is valued at close to $30 billion, and it has been in the top 100 of the Fortune 500 for a while. It's also very hard to come across someone who can't recognize the company's Swoosh logo. Indeed, it's one of the most recognizable logos around the world. Even in the remotest parts of the globe, many people still recognize it. But the company, headquartered in Portland, Oregon, sells more than just shoes for athletic performance. It also designs and manufactures sports equipment as well as apparel for both athletes and the general population. But before we look at the origins of Nike and how it's reached where it is today, I have a small favor to ask. Take a moment to subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us when you do. Also, you don't want to miss any of the several interesting videos about major brands we publish every week. With that out of the way, let's start with the basics. The name Nike comes from Greek mythology, where it's the name of the winged goddess of victory. And indeed, the swoosh logo is a copy of the symbol of the goddess, and it represents power, speed, movement, and motivation. But both the name Nike and the swoosh symbol were not used by the company in its first 5 years of existence. More of that in a moment. In the early 1960s, Phil Knight was a budding track athlete based at the University of Oregon. His coach was one Bill Bowerman, who moonlighted as a shoe designer. It's at this point where we get two conflicting stories about the early days of what we know today as Nike. In particular, as to who wore the first shoes by the company. The first side of the story states that Bowerman designed and created the first pair of shoes for Phil Knight to use in his track activities. And it's after Phil used this shoe a few times that the two decided to join hands in 1964 and start a company that would manufacture and sell similar shoes to other athletes. They named the company Blue Ribbon Sports, or BRS. But before they could produce their own designs, BRS signed a contract with the Japanese shoemaker Onitsuka Tiger to act as their local distributor in Oregon. Now, before we see how the company progressed, let's first hear the second side of the story in regard to who wore the first Nike shoes. Another of the athletes Bill Bowerman was coaching in the early 60s at the University of Oregon has disputed that it's Phil Knight who wore the first Nike shoes. Otis Davis, who won 2 gold medals at the 1960 Summer Olympics, has insisted that it was him that Bowerman made the first pair of Nike shoes for. He's been quoted saying, "I didn't like the way they felt to my feet. There was no support, and they were too tight. But I saw Bowerman made them from the waffle iron, and they were mine." I guess we'll never know for sure which of the two is the accurate account of how things happened. Now back to the part that's not disputed. Like most major brands we know, Nike started very small. During the early days, Blue Ribbon Sports, or BRS, operated in the city of Eugene, and they sold Onitsuka Tiger shoes at track meetups out of Phil Knight's car. But slowly the company grew, and within 5 years it had a physical store address and several employees. They'd also ended the Onitsuka Tiger contract, and they were making and selling their own shoes. In 1971 they changed their name to Nike. Obviously, this was a more catchy and easier to remember name. Not to forget, the symbolism behind it was intense and embodied the mission of the company. In the same year, Phil Knight asked Caroline Davidson, a student he taught at Portland State University, to design a logo for the company. She came up with the swoosh we all recognize today. It has changed a bit over the years, but the basic structure remains the same. To source capital for more expansion, the Nike company went public in December 1980. Today, Nike has more than 700 shops around the world. It also has offices in more than 45 countries. What's contributed to Nike having the success and visibility it has today? Several things have made Nike successful. First, Nike has been huge on advertising on TV, magazines, and newspapers. We can say that that's how it stayed in the face of the global population before the internet. And the company has always picked the best ad agencies, which have gone ahead to do a great job at creating the right placement and visibility for the brand. The first major advertising agency that Nike worked with was John Brown & Partners. They hired the agency based in Seattle in 1976. John Brown & Partners was behind the first major Nike brand ad. The slogan, "There's no finish line," which the agency created, is partly credited with acquiring Nike 50% of the market share by 1980. Then the company hired the Weeden & Kennedy ad agency, which remains their primary publicist to date. Weeden & Kennedy co-founder Dan Weeden is the one who created the "Just Do It" slogan that's become completely synonymous with the Nike name. The "Just Do It" slogan was first used in 1988. Ad Age, the global advertising industry magazine, named it as one of the top 5 ad slogans of the 20th century. It's been rumoured that Weeden's creation of the slogan was inspired by the convicted murderer Gary Gilmore. Apparently, Gary Gilmore said, "Let's do it," as his last words before he was executed in 1977. But does it matter where the slogan came from? Today, Nike has embraced the internet as one of the primary ways it reaches its customers with ads. Another way Nike has been able to capture the market is through sponsorships. Over the years, the company has sponsored athletes in different disciplines. The athletes in exchange use Nike products and allow the company to use their success for promotion purposes. The first professional athlete to endorse Nike was Ilie Nastase, a tennis player from Romania. Meanwhile, the first track athlete to endorse the brand was Steve Prefontaine, a long-distance runner that Nike co-founder Bill Bowerman coached at the University of Oregon. The Steve Prefontaine building at Nike's corporate headquarters is named in honor of this athlete. They also have his statue at the headquarters. In the recent past, Nike has sponsored Eliud Kipchoge, who is the first human being to run a marathon in under 2 hours. In fact, the first attempt to run the sub-2 hours by Kipchoge and other elite athletes at Monza, Italy in May 2017 was organised and entirely sponsored by Nike. In the event dubbed Breaking 2, none of the athletes ran the marathon in under 2 hours. In October 2019, another attempt was made, and this time the main sponsor was the chemical manufacturing and processing company Ineos. Eliud Kipchoge managed to complete the race at 1 hour and 59 minutes and 40 seconds. Nike was a minor sponsor as Kipchoge wore their shoes. Many athletes wearing Nike shoes have broken world records in recent years. In fact, there's now a debate as to whether Nike shoes are giving them an undue advantage. The Nike shoes in particular contain a carbon fibre plate in the midsole, and this supports an athlete through energy return. There are those who argue that perhaps it's time the world athletic regulating bodies, such as the International Amateur Athletic Federation, or IAAF, issued tighter guidelines on the designs of shoes used in competitions. Whether this will ever happen, time will tell, but in the meantime, Nike is having a good time. The other way the company has grown over the years is through acquisitions. Nike has in particular acquired several apparels and footwear companies and startups. This is mostly for several reasons, including increasing manufacturing capacity, getting new technologies and designs, as well as getting on board the best talent it can get. The list of the businesses Nike has acquired includes Cole Haan in 1988, Bauer Hockey in 1994, and Hurley International in 2002. Another in the list is Converse, for which Nike paid $309 million in 2002. Nike has also acquired Starter in 2004 and Umbro in 2008. Nike has since sold some of the subsidiaries to focus on its core business. Among those sold are Starter, Bauer Hockey, Umbro and Cole Haan. While the company's primary business is to supply athletes with shoes, kits and equipment, it's also been successful at making its brand not only attractive but also accessible to the general population. The company has continued to design and manufacture all kinds of items for the ordinary person on the street. These include casual shoes, baseball caps, and clothes for chic casual wear. And one way the brand has accessed this particular market is through the use of influencers. Having successful individuals both in and outside of sports be seen in Nike apparels has been a massive success at convincing especially the young population to spot Nike stuff. But all is not great at Nike. In particular, the company has been accused of unethical manufacturing practices. Like most companies in the fashion industry, Nike has sought to cut costs involved in the manufacture of especially items sold to the general population. One way the company is cutting costs is by manufacturing in countries that offer cheaper labour costs. Most of the factories that manufacture and process Nike products are located in Asia. In particular, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, China, Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, Pakistan, and the Philippines. Most of these countries are known to have very lax laws when it comes to worker rights. Conditions in some of the manufacturing companies in these countries have been described as basically sweatshops. Allegations have also been made that some of the factories in these countries are using child labour. But to be fair to Nike, not every factory in a third world country is terrible for the local population. Some of them are very much needed there. They're the only source of employment for millions of people. And to allay fears that Nike products are being made in sweatshops or through child labour, Nike is one of the companies that have chosen to disclose information about the local companies they contract to manufacture on their behalf. Nike does this through its corporate governance reports. But this came after some pressure was applied by human rights organisations such as CorpWatch. Nobody knows precisely how the future of Nike looks, but it's clear the brand still has a lot to offer. Thanks for staying with me to this point. If you've not subscribed to our channel, please do. Also, don't forget to like, share and comment. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.